Let's return to our top story. An Israeli military court has been delivering its verdict in the case of an Israeli soldier accused of manslaughter. Let's talk to the BBC's Yolan Nell, who's in Tel Aviv for us. And the court has been spending the past couple of hours delivering its verdict. I mean, have we got a final decision?
Well, we understand that if Sergeant Elor Azaria was going to be acquitted, that would have been made clear at the beginning of this verdict statement. And certainly what's happening at the moment, the lead judge in this case, Colonel Maya Heller, has been going through in her verdict statement, taking apart different points of the defense case one by one. And she has already said that this Palestinian man who was wounded, Abdel Fattah Sharif, who was shot on the 24th of March last year by Sergeant Azaria, that he was shot needlessly in the view of the judges. And she also said that the sergeant had given evolving and evasive testimony in this case. Of course, the defense case was that the sergeant believed that Sharif, who was lying on the ground and was still moving slightly, posed a threat. He said that he thought that he could have had a suicide belt on underneath his jacket. The prosecution said that he acted in revenge, killing this wounded man with a single shot to the head about 15 minutes after he was shot by other soldiers because he'd been involved in this knife attack.
What's been the Israeli army's position on all this?
Well, the Israeli army has made very clear from the beginning in initial statements that were put out as Sergeant Azaria was being investigated and then arrested, that it takes any breach of its ethical code very seriously indeed. But there has been a big public debate in Israel with some top politicians and celebrities backing Sergeant Azaria and his actions. Of course, there have also been cases in the past where officials have called for lethal force to be used against Palestinians carrying out attacks. And there was this wave of attacks that took place over the past year or so, particularly stabbing attacks. But we have got some small protests already taking place here in Tel Aviv, and so there's high security as people are worried about the effects that any protests and disturbances that they might cause.
Yolan, many thanks. BBC's Yolan Nell live for us outside that court in Tel Aviv.
Just turning 10 past the hour here in Moscow. Israeli radio reports are claiming that a soldier accused of unlawfully killing a wounded Palestinian man last year has been found guilty of manslaughter. Elor Azaria was earlier greeted with some applause as he entered the courtroom at the beginning of the session. Azaria shot and killed a Palestinian man as he lay wounded and motionless on the ground after having reportedly stabbed an Israeli soldier. Just to warn you, you may find the following footage disturbing. The Palestinian lying on the ground was suspected of carrying out a stabbing attack. He had been wounded himself by Israeli soldiers just minutes before. Now, his killing was branded of an execution and immoral by various human rights organizations. However, the reaction of many Israelis was quite different. We understand this crowd gathered just outside the courthouse to support the Israeli soldier ahead of the verdict. Thousands have been rallying since Azaria's arrest, demanding his release and hailing him a national hero. All right, we can now cross live to RT's Paula Slier in Tel Aviv for more details on this. Paula, good to see you again. We understand we're getting early reports here, a possible guilty verdict handed down. Can you bring us up to date, please?
Well, the verdict hasn't yet been handed down, but by all expectations, it is likely that this Israeli soldier, Elor Azaria, will be found guilty of manslaughter. For the last hour, the judge has been reading out his findings, his conclusions, and it certainly doesn't look positive for the soldier. If indeed he is found guilty, he is likely to be sentenced in about 1 month's time, and then he could face several years in prison. Despite this, he does have a lot of support. There is a huge crowd of supporters outside the courthouse here in Tel Aviv right now. Now, Azaria claims that he only shot this Palestinian man because he thought he had an explosive belt, and that many think that he was justified by his actions. In fact, the Israel Democracy took a poll and found that 60% of those asked agreed that the soldier's actions were justified. Even further, in that same poll, some 46% said that a Palestinian who carries out a terror attack should be killed, whether or not he still poses a threat. And it's not just people here in the Israeli public who support the soldier. A number of politicians have also made statements on his behalf. Let's take a listen.
The entire process was polluted even before it began. I hope he is acquitted, and if he isn't acquitted, I believe he should get an immediate pardon so he doesn't go to jail.
Everyone who stabs Jews or harms innocent people should be killed.
There are clear instructions to the Israeli police. As soon as a police officer feels danger to himself or any other citizen, he needs to shoot according to the regulations.
Now, statements such as these one have prompted Human Rights Watch to put out a report condemning the fact that they are encouraging this kind of behavior. I think it's important for you to realize that there have been more than 150 instances since October 2015 in which security forces fatally shot Palestinian adults and children suspected of trying to stab, run over or shoot Israelis in Israel and the West Bank. And during that time, Palestinian assailants have killed 33 Israelis, including passers-by and security officials in Israel and the West Bank. Human Rights Watch has repeatedly condemned Palestinian attacks against Israeli civilians.
All right, Artie's Paula Slier there live in Tel Aviv. Thank you. Well, as Paula was just saying, Human Rights Watch did put out a report accusing senior Israeli politicians and officials of encouraging a shoot-to-kill policy. Earlier, we spoke to Ahmed Ben Chemsi, a Human Rights Watch representative for the Middle East and North Africa.
What we know is that we documented a lot of statements, including one by Police Minister Gilad Erdan, who said that if a terrorist, that I'm quoting him, has a knife or a screwdriver, he mentioned a screwdriver in his hand, you should shoot to kill him without thinking twice. This is not just the politician speaking his mind, it's the police ministers. Now, given the prevalence and prominence of statements encouraging security forces to shoot to kill, what we are asking for is that Netanyahu and other senior officials issue a strong and public private admonition to intentionally use lethal force only when strictly necessary. There is such a thing as international human rights laws, and these laws limit the intentional lethal use of firearms, what we call shooting to kill, to very limited circumstances. And these are circumstances in which it is strictly necessary to protect one's life, and in which there is no other less extreme option.
Israeli journalist and author Gideon Levy told us that he finds the widespread support for Mr. Azaria disturbing.
He's perceived not only as someone who didn't do anything wrong, but as a national hero. And this is very, very worrying and very, very bothering anyone who wants to see a rule of law and a rule of justice here. It's very good that this trial took place, but let's remember that he's only one case, and there were many other cases very similar, with only one difference, that there were no cameras like there were in this case. It's very clear that when they executed Palestinians, it was accepted by the system as a normal behavior. Killing should be the last choice and not the first one. If the orders will be crystal clear and people who will violate those orders will be punished seriously, then it will stop at once.
As Mr. Levy just mentioned, this is not the only case where Israeli soldiers have been accused of using excessive force against Palestinians. Last year, Human Rights Watch published a report outlining the abuse of children, while other cases of a heavy-handed approach have also come to light. Again, you may find this video disturbing.
There was a fence in front of me, so I tried to jump the fence, and I fell on my face. And the soldiers, they came right behind me, picked me up, and threw me on the floor. And then they punched me in the face, and I fell asleep, and I went unconscious, and I woke up in the hospital.
قوم ابعد عن نهره.
This is RT International.